guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. So today, as you can see by the title, I'm going to be doing my April wrap up and telling you guys all about the 17 books that I read this month. But before we get into it, I would like to thank today's sponsor. So guys, let me just tell you something straight up. I'm never going to accept a sponsorship that I do not believe in, but this product,
you need it.
let me just tell you right now that you need it. So this is the Vaunt reading light, and it is not just any average reading light, okay? It can twist and turn, and that's what I like about this. It can like wrap around any way, because usual traditional reading lights, they just kind of like blind me and I never use them. But Cameron gets mad because he wants me to use a reading light, because when I have like the lights on to read, it keeps him up. So this has been our perfect solution. I kind of like do a little thing like that and clip it so it goes straight down onto the page instead of shining kind of in my face. It also has 3 different light settings, and it's by touch. So as you can see, there's 3 settings. 1, 2, and 3. And I like that because sometimes, you know, it's just kind of dim in the room and I just want a little bit of light. Sometimes I'm reading completely at night and I want a lot of light. So I really like that it is like touch as well. I just think that's really cool. It has a little charging cable, so it's completely wireless, and it doesn't take batteries because batteries are so annoying to me. I don't know about y'all, but I never buy batteries, so it's really convenient. And yeah, thank you so much to Vaunt, this amazing reading light, for sponsoring today's video. As always with sponsorships, I reached out to them and asked them for some perks for you guys, because I'm not going to feature anything unless we get some perks as well. So they did give us a discount code, and that code is hailey10h. It will get you 10% off at the link down below. And also Vaunt was kind enough to also offer doing a giveaway for you guys. So all you have to do is like this video, comment down below, and make sure you're subscribed to my channel, and you will be entered to win a reading light of your own. And it will also announce it on Instagram. So if you want to enter, put your Instagram down below so I can tag you in the announcements when I post it. So yeah, thank you so much to Vaunt again. And y'all, this reading light is phenomenal. I just have to say, that is something that I have been loving this month, and I hope you guys will try it out too. Also, another favorite this month that is not bookish related is this wine that I'm drinking right now. Also, these wine bottle earrings that I'm wearing. Yes, as I was drinking this in the video, I'm like, oh my god, I have to put on my wine earrings to match. But anyway, this is the Santa Margarita Pinot Grigio. It's like $17 at Total Wine or at H-E-B, which is where I get it. And this is the wine that Kylie Jenner gets when she has wine nights with her friends. This has also been shouted out in a Drake song and a Travis Scott song. So like, all the rich people drink this cheap wine, and I'll tell you why, because it's fucking phenomenal. I was honestly blown away by it, and that's not sponsored, that's just tea. I love this wine, so maybe she'll be extra peppy today. Oh, maybe she'll have jokes today. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into the wrap up finally. So first, before I tell you guys about the books, I will do some stats for you. I generate my stats from Storygraph because that is what I use to track my reading. As you can see, I read 17 books for a total of 5,371 pages, and this is the mood breakdown. Pretty typical for what I read every single month. Mysterious, tense, dark, and emotional tend to be my top emotions. Here's the breakdown of the pacing. I did end up reading a couple slow books this month, which is a shock because, as we know, I usually just stick to the fast-paced ones. Here is my length or page number breakdown. I mostly read medium-sized books, like between the 300 and 500 page mark, but I did have a couple that were under 300. I only read 1 nonfiction book this month, and this is the breakdown of the other genres that I read this month. Mostly thrillers, romance, contemporary, mystery, all of those things that I read every single month. You all know how it goes. And finally, for my star ratings, I had 1 1-star, 1 2.5 star, 2 3 stars, 1 3.5 star, 4 4 stars, 1 4.25, 2 4.5, and 5 5-star reads. So that takes us to an average of a 3.96 star rating. I'd say that's pretty good. Just a few more stats for you that Storygraph doesn't generate, but that I usually tell you guys every month. The mode that I read these books, or like
the mode, the modality, I don't know what the word is.
The way that I read these books this month, I read 15 physically and 2 via audiobook. Of all 17 books, only 4 of them were young adult, the rest were adult. As for the author stats, I read 2 books by male authors and the rest were by female authors. And I read 3 books by people of color and the rest were by white authors. So now that we have all the stats out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the synopses and reviews of all of these 17 books. It's gonna be a long one, so go ahead and settle in.
I need some wine to get through this first one. Oh.
So I'm gonna do them in the order that I usually do them every single month, where I start with my lowest rated book and work up to my highest rated books. The 1-star book that I ended up reading this month was The Lake by Natasha Preston.
I think this is gonna go down as the worst book of 2021.
It definitely is holding that top spot right now. Like, guys, this is worse than 50 Shades of Grey. This is worse than Chris Harrison's horrible smut novel. This is the worst book I have maybe read of all time. Like, in my entire life, I've never read a worse book. And I like Natasha Preston, okay? Her books are pretty hit or miss for me, but I've had a few really big hits. And with a YA thriller author, y'all know I don't usually like those, that's saying something, you know? I really like The Cellar by Natasha Preston. I really like The Cabin. I've heard that The Lost is really good, but The Lake, let me tell you, no, absolutely not. If this little baby, is on your TBR, remove her immediately. So basically this book follows these 2 girls who are, I think, like 17, somewhere around like late teens, and they are invited to return to the summer camp they went to when they were younger, as camp counselors. Well, they ended up having like a secret from their past that happened when they were at the summer camp as like attendees, like not counselors, when they were like literal children. And I know what you're thinking, like they were there when they were 8. How scandalous of a thing could they have done? Let me go ahead and tell you, it's not scandalous at all. It's horrible. Horrible. But we'll get into that, okay? Let me finish the synopsis real quick before I start critiquing. It's hard to hold myself back, okay. So they're returning to this camp and weird things start happening. They are getting notes like, basically, I know what you did when you were younger, the lake never forgets, like stuff like that. It's supposed to be very like, I know what you did last summer, like slasher vibes. And all the rest of the camp thinks it's just like a prank. But these girls are like,
oh shit, somebody knows what we did back here when we were 8.
It is a total of, let me see, 350 pages, 349 pages were basically the same thing happening, no twist whatsoever. It was just a bunch of teens at a summer camp. Scary things were happening that weren't actually that scary. Their hormones were going wild. They were like,
oh my God, should we do something? No, we probably shouldn't. Oh my God, but wait, that's like scary. Should we do something? Maybe not.
And that was literally the entire first 99% of this book. The only twist in this book was on the singular last page. And let me tell you, it was my least favorite twist I have ever read in any thriller ever. It was horrible. And the whole time you're reading this, you're thinking like, okay, it's leading me to believe that this certain thing happened, so it's not gonna be that. Right? It's definitely not gonna be that. Yeah, it ends up being that. Horrible. I feel like I wasted my few hours that I took reading this book, and I could have been reading a wonderful book, and I'm mad at this book because it wasted my time. It's horrible. It's bad. That's all I have to say. Needless to say, we're unhauling her. Moving up a little bit in the rankings, but not much, we have my 2.5 star book I read this month, which was The Roommates. In theory, this book is amazing, okay? I really like the concept. So basically, follows this girl. She's very prim, very proper, but she's in love with her longtime best friend from childhood, and he is like an edgy rock star. He's kind of an asshole, and she ends up moving out to LA to live with him. And as soon as she gets there, he's like, oh yeah, by the way, oops, forgot to tell you because I'm an asshole. I'm actually leaving and going on tour. Yeah, you can still live here. No, it's fine. But like, I gotta have somebody sublet my side of this apartment. So you're gonna be living with this random man. And she starts living with this random man. I know what you're thinking. Oh my God, it's gonna be great. Like forced proximity. They're gonna fall in love. It's fine. Her other love interest is being replaced immediately. And this guy is a porn star. So he's actually working in like the adult film industry. And I thought it was gonna be so exciting to hear about that like side of the world. Like I don't know much about porn. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I wanna know. I wanna learn. I'm curious. And yeah, basically it's supposed to be a love story between this prim and proper girl and this porn star man. Sounds great in theory, not great in execution. This whole thing was basically like a cheese fest. The dialogue was so contrived and cliche, and it's not like in a good way, in like a Hallmark movie kind of way, in like a weird way. Like, it felt like pandering almost. I don't know. It just was really weird. Like, it was obvious that they were trying to cast sex workers in a positive light, which I appreciated, but I don't think this author succeeded because it seemed like a very try hard is the only way that I can explain it. The romance just really fizzled out for me. I didn't feel any chemistry whatsoever between our two main characters. It felt like they didn't really like each other for a majority of the book. Also, our main female perspective that we were following was so annoying. I literally just wanted to punch her in the face. Like, she was so uptight and freaking just annoying. And I was like, can you just let him live his life and like stop? So yeah, I appreciate what this book was trying to do, but it just definitely was not for me. I know some people like this book as like a guilty pleasure, so if that's what you're doing, go and rock with your bad self. I don't mind that at all. I support that 100%. It's just not for me. I rated it right in the middle at a 2.5. I mean, that's a bad rating for me on my rating scale. If I think something's like just dead on average, I'll usually give it a 3. So this was like below average, but you know, not horrible. Not like this level horrible. I just hit myself in the face. Moving on to my 3-star books that I read this month. First up, we have Choke by Chuck Palahniuk. And I know what you're thinking.
Hailey, I thought you said Chuck Palahniuk was one of your new favorite authors of all time. What's going on? Why is he down here in the 3s? I don't understand.
Okay, well, this book sounded really good in theory, just like The Roommates. I thought this premise sounded chef's kiss phenomenal. Basically, this guy is a scam artist and he makes his money and his living just going around to different restaurants, pretending to choke and then suing the pants off the restaurant. And that sounds hilarious. I love Chuck Palahniuk's like dry, funny style of writing that's like a little fucked up. I don't know. I just love that. And this was that, but it wasn't what I was expecting. It was not just the straight up plot. It had like other weird subplots of weirdness. I don't even know how to describe it. The side characters in this book were beyond the level of weird that I enjoy in a Chuck Palahniuk book. They were like gross weird, okay? There was a lot of talk of bodily functions in this book. There was a lot of gross, like body horror, I would almost call it, in this book. There was a lot of like vomit, poop, not great, gross things, and that just really turned me off from enjoying this book. I was entertained for sure, but enjoyed? I don't know if I could stretch that far. So Chuck You got one hit, you got one miss. I don't know what's going on with you, bud. And then the other 3-star book that I read this month was The Cousins by Karen M. McManus. This is another YA thriller author that's pretty hit or miss for me. I had a lot of problems with One of Us is Lying, which is like her big book that everybody loves, but I did like Two Can Keep a Secret and the sequel to One of Us is Lying, so hit or miss, hit or miss. And The Cousins for me, it was just average. It's basically about these cousins, who would have guessed, who all get this letter from their estranged grandmother that says, hey, you know, come work at my resort over the summer and maybe I'll write you into the will. Maybe you'll get the inheritance that you've been desiring. And all these cousins are like,
damn, let's go do it, because you know what? We've never met all of our cousins. Our family's estranged. For some reason, this grandma like cut all our parents out of the will, so we're confused. We want to go and be little investigators and also make some money.
So they end up going to this resort and unraveling this mystery. And honestly, I don't really remember what the ending of the mystery was, so that is why I rated it 3 stars. It was fun while I was listening to it. I read this via audiobook and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was entertaining, especially for a YA thriller. I thought it was well done. I remember the ending being a little too out there for me. I don't remember exactly what happened, but if you want to enjoy a nice little fluffy YA thriller, not too dark, not too crazy, then maybe give it a try, but it was pretty forgettable for me. It's not something you need to run out and read. The 3.5 star I read this month was The Return by Rachel Harrison. This is a horror slash thriller-ish book that follows this group of friends, and one of their friends ends up going missing. She's missing for like over a year, like a really long time, to the point where she's presumed dead. They have a funeral for her, like everyone's grieved this girl, and then she ends up showing up at her house and just being like,
hey, I'm back. Totally forgot what happened to me. Like, don't know where I've been for the past year and a half, but hey guys, how y'all?
like, oh yeah. It's a great premise and it absolutely went batshit. Like, it went off the deep end, okay? This is gonna be for fans of like Night Film, Bunny by Mona Awad. If you like some of those like weird books that kind of take it off the deep end, you will love The Return. I also liked it because it had those like Mean Girls-esque kind of friend dynamics where it's like they're kind of catty, they talk behind each other's backs, they're best friends, but there's also a lot of drama and like things underneath the surface that they don't talk about. I really liked that kind of exploration into female friendships, and the setting I really liked as well. They're in like one of those hotels because they're going on like on a girls trip to celebrate this girl's return, you know? So they're all reunited, they're going on this girls trip, their BFF is back from wherever the fuck she came from, and they're like, you know what, wherever she was, it doesn't matter. Like, we're all kind of curious, and yes, do we want to know this mystery? For sure. But let's just go on a girls trip, or whatever, it's fine. Let's just let her know that she's not dead. She is in fact a part of this friend group once again. And the setting where they're at is phenomenal. It is one of those hotels that's like an Instagram hotel. Like, if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. You know, they like have those hotels where every room is like a photo op. It's very like bougie. It's like, you know, think Instagram baddie, okay? It's one of those hotels, and I loved reading the description of that, and just the fact that a horror book took place in one of these like cutesy little places. Oh, that juxtaposition was wonderful for me. I bet you're wondering at this point, you know, Haley, it sounds like you really enjoyed this book. Why is it only a 3.5? Well, the big reveal of like where this girl ended up going and where she was for the past year and a half, I didn't really enjoy that. I thought it could have gone in a different direction that wasn't as weird and was more like concrete and real and dark and emotional. That's where I was wanting it to go to, but it ended up going like weird body horror. This is another one, by the way, that has a ton of body horror. It is very gross. There are graphic descriptions of like teeth falling out, vomit, bleeding, things like that. So if you're not a fan of body horror or weird horror, steer clear. If you are a fan of that stuff, I think you would love this. Now let's go ahead and get into my 4-star books. So the first 4-star book that I read this month was Homebody by Rupi Kaur, and I actually loved this poetry collection so much. It's split up into 4 sections. So you have Mind, Heart, Rest, and Awake, and they each cover different themes, a lot about mental health, a lot about sexual assault, about body autonomy, about being a woman, about imposter syndrome, and I connected with a lot of these poems. I liked it a lot better actually than The Sun and Her Flowers and Milk and Honey, Rupi's 2 previous poetry collections. This one just hit different. I was crying through a lot of it. It was really poignant, and if you're in like the, I would say like 20 to 30 age range and you identify as a woman, I think you would really enjoy this. Like, a lot of things are just very poignant to that time in your life. So I feel like it hit pretty hard for me right now, especially the stuff about like finding your purpose and your passion and imposter syndrome and people kind of underestimating you because of the way you look or because of your gender identification. So I really like this. I thought she hit it out of the park. The only reason why this is not a 5-star for me is because there were some of those like, I don't want to be insulting, but like filler poems, you know what I mean? Where it's not a poem, it's just kind of like a statement that somebody could put in pretty script and like post on their Instagram story. Some of the poems kind of seemed like that, but there were some in there that were really great, so don't count this one out just because of that. The next 4-star book I read this month was Wild at Heart by K.A. Tucker, and this is the sequel to The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker, which follows Kala and Jonah on their romance journey of falling in love, and that one is a hate to love. This one picks up where The Simple Wild left off. It's kind of a cliffhanger at the end of that one, so this one resolves that and follows them for the next like year or so of their life, and I loved reading more about Kala and Jonah's story. These people feel so real, and I care about Kala so much. Even though she is a fictional character, I feel like we would be best friends. I love her. I really connect with her character. And I don't want to give like a synopsis or talk about specific things in case you haven't read The Simple Wild. I don't want to spoil that for you, but just know if you like The Simple Wild, you will love Wild at Heart, and continuing Kala and Jonah's journey, especially with like the Alaskan imagery and reading about that. Again, the only reason this is a 4-star instead of a 5-star is because some chapters did drag a little bit. There is a lot of like nature descriptions and like, this is how you survive in the Alaskan wild. And I was like, okay, I don't really care how to survive in the Alaskan wild. I just care how Kala and Jonah survive in the Alaskan wild. So I don't know, if you like that kind of like extra naturey stuff, which I do like the imagery, but the intense details, not for me. You'll really like this. If you just care about the love story, I think you'll also like this, but maybe you'll like it at a 4-star level like me instead of a 5-star level. So those are my thoughts. Next up in the 4-star category, we have Digg by A.S. King. This is a YA contemporary novel about a few cousins that don't know about each other. So this is very eerily similar to The Cousins, not in plot or premise at all, but in the like family dynamic situation. Basically, there are these 2 grandparents. They were potato farmers. They made a shit ton of money doing this potato farming and like selling the land. They are multi-millionaires, and they end up cutting off all of their children and saying, you know, learn hard work, survive on your own. Even when they get like cancer and can't work, they're like, nah, we can't support you, like find a way. It's called ingenuity, bitch, independence, do it. So that's very flawed and creates a lot of family trauma and intergenerational trauma within this family. And it follows from the perspective of not the like parents, but all of the cousins, so the children of all the parents, and then also we get chapters from the point of view of the grandparents as well. So we're kind of getting to know all of the family dynamics and how all of these people were so intricately affected by this way of raising children that the grandparents chose to do, and how that even hurts them as well. And it also goes a lot into race. This family is white, and you see a lot of I wouldn't necessarily say racism within the family. It's not like outright racism, but it's definitely like internal biases, which are racist. But it's not what you would think of when you think of like outright racism. It's very nuanced, and I really liked that about this book, that it goes into microaggressions and why those are problematic, and it goes into white power tattoos and why that is problematic, although I think that's more straightforward than microaggressions. But even just the way that we look at privilege and family dynamics as white people, I think it's really important to kind of examine that, and I think this fictional work does a great job at doing that and encouraging that deeper thought about race. However, I did not like the structure of this book. I enjoyed the message, I enjoyed the story, but it was structured in a way that really I didn't like. It took me out of it a lot. It's kind of structured like Matt Haig, where you have like the little tiny chapters that are like, I don't know, 2 to 10 pages long, and they're just like, they have a weird title, they're not numbered. It's just like basically little vignettes in these people's lives, and it was a little confusing to kind of figure out the timeline and put it all together. And it was also a little like speculative. It was very heady, and I just wanted it to be a little bit more straightforward in story format while still keeping the nuance of the greater conversations that this book was introducing. So I don't know if all of that made sense really, but those are my thoughts on Digg. Overall, a really valuable book. If you can get over the structure, I think you will be absolutely in love with it. The last 4-star book that I read this month was Every Value Break by Peter Swanson. Now, I know this is a very divisive book on BookTube right now. I know Gabby from Gabby Reads and Noelle Gallagher on their live show for this book, they both rated it 2 stars. But I was talking about this book with a few other people, and Olivia from Olivia Reads a Latte rated this 4 stars, and Jacqueline rated this 5 stars. Gio, I think, rated this in the 4 or 5 star range as well. I was talking about this book with a lot of people and had a lot of mixed opinions. So I'm kind of falling right in the middle, more towards the positive side, at a 4 star. Basically, this book follows a woman who cheats on her fiance on her bachelorette party, and the guy that she cheats on him with ends up popping up and stalking her. She thinks that she actually sees him at her wedding, and he actually follows her to the honeymoon destination. So it's very suspenseful, it's very thrilling. You're like leading up the whole time thinking like, what is gonna happen? What is this guy gonna say to her? Does he like think that he's like delusionally in love with her? Like, what is happening here? And I really liked that aspect of the book. The whole first like 150 pages of when I thought it was just that, chef's kiss, amazing. I loved it. The whole atmosphere was great. The reason why I bumped it down from a 5 star to a 4 star was because the last 50 pages were not like that at all. And it took a weird left turn into like Brightlands territory, okay? So if you remember the reading vlog when I read the Brightlands, you'll remember that I really, really liked everything that was happening until it took a hard left and went crazy. That's kind of what happens here, and I do appreciate the direction that Peter Swanson was trying to go with this book. I like the idea of the hard left turn. I just think, again, the execution was where it was a little bit lacking, seemed a little bit pandering. You know, you can very much tell this was written by a man who really thought that women who read thrillers would love to pick up this book. And I'm sorry to say, Peter, you did not dupe me. Although your writing was phenomenal for the first like half to 3/4, that little quarter broke me at the end, buddy. And I just think if you are going to go somewhere, freaking go there and do your research and make it believable and nuanced and feel real instead of almost belittling a societal issue by making it so otherworldly and crazy. I think if it would have been more realistic and more nuanced, I would have given this a 5-star, no doubt, especially because of the atmosphere and the writing style. I loved it. It was so fast-paced, so good. But again, that ending, it just took me right out of it, buddy. So now we're getting into the like very small margins between the books, okay? Do I know what I was thinking? Rating these books 4.25, 4.5. What am I doing? I liked all the rest of these books, okay? Don't ask me, I don't know. Basically what I'm trying to say is every book from this point forward, highly recommend. I guess I got kind of critical this month. Ooh, she's analytical. She's a reviewer, okay? So the 4.25 book I read this month was The Hunting Wives by May Cobb. This was my book of the month for April, and I absolutely loved this book. I devoured this book, okay? I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was right up my alley. The premise was something that I was very interested in from page 1. It follows this lady in a suburban Texan neighborhood right down here in Texas, y'all. And she kind of falls into this group of women who call themselves the Hunting Wives. And it's very much like Big Little Lies, but make it Southern and make it more like devious. I feel like the women in Big Little Lies had redeeming qualities, and these women, they were just bad. Like, they call themselves the Hunting Wives because they go out and shoot guns, but there's also another reason why they call themselves the Hunting Wives, and I'm gonna let you go ahead and read this book to find out what that is. But yeah, we have that plot going on, and we also have the more prominent plot of this new lady in the group kind of becoming slowly obsessed with the ringleader, kind of like the Regina George type of the group. And she's becoming obsessed to a level that I would say borders on infatuation. Like, it's going beyond I want your life and more to I want you. And it's very sinister. Murders happen, people are framed, there's obsession, there's blackmail, there's family dynamics, there's suburban drama, there is everything. This book has everything. Cue the Stefan quote. I think I only knocked off those 0.75 stars at the end because I rated it right when I was finished reading it, and the ending didn't have the punch that I was really wanting after the buildup from the whole book. There's a lot of tension, and you're really rooting for your main character for the last like 100 pages, and at the end it's kind of like abrupt. Like, I wanted this big explosive ending that I couldn't predict, and I didn't predict the ending, but it's like, oh, I didn't predict that, that's so crazy, and then it was over. And I wanted some more like aftermath kind of thing. So I don't know if that's justified in knocking off 0.75 stars, but I still just really like this book. Don't even listen to me. What am I saying? All right, now let's get into my 4.5 star books. The first book that I read this month that I rated 4.5 stars is Tools of Engagement by Tessa Bailey. This is my first Tessa Bailey book, and you guys, I loved it. I really enjoyed this book, and I'm excited to read the rest of the series. I think this is like Hot and Hammered. Yeah, it's Hot and Hammered is the name of this series because it's all about like HGTV, like home improvement couples, and I just think that's so cute. So this one follows our main character, Bethany, who is a total perfectionist. She is a house like stager and interior decorator, and she's amazing at what she does. She's flawless. She has this like perfect image, and I really related to her in that way as a character. I try to keep that up as well. I'm very much type A, perfectionist, so I really liked her as a character. And she ends up falling for this guy who works on houses, and he is like country. He's like kind of rough around the edges, and he actually has responsibility of his niece. He's like taking care of her, so he's like rough, but he's also like sweet, and they have an enemies to lovers situation. Like, she has never liked him. He and her have always had this like weird, tense relationship where it's like they don't like each other and there's like that banter going on, but there's like always an undercurrent of like maybe they don't actually hate each other. So that is what they're exploring in this book as they team up in a house flipping competition against Bethany's brother, and it's like a reality TV thing. So it was really fun to read about that. I love books that incorporate like a competition, especially like a reality TV competition. I think that's so fun. So I loved the premise. I loved the characters and their connection. It felt so real and so genuine. And y'all, the smut in this book, I'll just leave it at that. The other 4.5 star book that I read this month was You Love Me by Caroline Kepnes. This is one of my most anticipated books of 2021, and I'm excited to report that it did not disappoint. This is the third book in the Joe Goldberg You series. It is written in the second person from the perspective of Joe Goldberg, who is a stalker and serial killer, and he is at it again. He is now moved to the Pacific Northwest, and he is stalking another woman who he is convinced is absolutely in love with him. And I don't want to give away the plot to this book or anything that happens because I feel like I would have to spoil the first and second book, so I'm not going to do that. But I will say that being in Joe's head once again was wonderful. I laughed out loud so many times while reading this book. His narrative and the way that he thinks is just so funny. It's so dark and it's so funny, and you're sitting there thinking like, oh my god, relate, this dude is so hilarious, and then you're like, wait, am I relating to a serial killer right now? Okay, like, it's just so funny. The way that he bumbles throughout social situations and thinks things with no filter. I think some of this stuff too, Joe, I can't lie. And it's really nice and refreshing to read about that, but then you're also like introspective part of it where it's like, oh my god, I'm literally relating to a psychopath. So I don't know, these books are just so freaking fun, and I love Joe's antics, and I hope we get an unlimited number of books of the series because I loved it. The only thing I didn't like about this book, which is the reason why it was a 4.5 instead of a 5-star, was I didn't like the connection to book 2 that ended up being in this book. I thought that they could have done it differently. There was one specific character that showed up in this book that I didn't like, that really wasn't in book 2 at all, but it was like a connection to book 2, and he was annoying the whole time. I really didn't enjoy that character. I feel like if we cut that character out and replaced him with the kind of big thing that happened near the end of this book that connected it to book 2, it would have been so much better. And I realize that if you haven't read this book, you don't know what I'm talking about. But if you have read this book, you know. So if you know, you know. Finally, we have come to the end, and we have the final 5 books, which I all rated 5 stars. So the first 5-star book that I read this month was Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson, and this was the sequel to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, which is one of my favorite YA thrillers ever, and I actually think that this sequel was better than the original. I enjoyed this more than A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and I'm so excited that we're getting a 3rd book in the series as well. I cannot wait for it to come out because I liked Pip so much more in this book. I feel like she was less of a cookie cutter, Sherlock Holmes, Nancy Drew kind of investigator, and she was more like rough around the edges, angsty, not taking shit from anybody, and I love that about Pip, and I knew that was inside of her, and I was just waiting for it to come out, and I'm so excited that it did in this book. I also thought the mystery in this book was mind-blowing. Like, yes, the mystery in the first book was good, but this, I was blown away. And this book totally tricked me. I thought I knew what was gonna happen, totally, and it didn't happen. And then I was like, wait, what? That didn't happen. Wait, what? But I knew that was gonna happen, huh? And I literally refused to believe it because I thought I had predicted this book and I didn't, and it made me really mad, but at the same time, I loved it because I love unpredictable YA thrillers. They're very few and far between. This one is a good one, highly recommend. Let's kind of switch gears into romance for a minute. Forever Wild. The last book that we are following Calla and Jonah in the Simple Wild series is Forever Wild by K.A. Tucker, and this is just a short little novella about Calla and Jonah and kind of where we're leaving them for now. And it follows what happens with their family over the Christmas holidays. And it was just so freaking sweet and sentimental, and it felt so real, and it felt like I was just hanging out with my friends on Christmas in Alaska. I don't know, I just loved it. I also loved seeing the family dynamics because you hear a lot about Calla and Jonah's families over the course of Simple Wild and Wild at Heart, but actually getting to see them all interact in the kind of like Brady Bunch scenario where Jonah's family and Calla's family are visiting for Christmas in Alaska. It was really cool to see. I cried while reading this book. I absolutely love Calla and Jonah, and I'm so sad this is the last edition of them. Although Marie, the veterinarian from this series, is getting her own love story, so I'm sure Calla and Jonah will make a guest appearance in there, but I could read about Calla and Jonah forever, and this was the perfect ending. If we had to end their story, I feel like this was the perfect one. I loved it so much. 5 stars, that's all I have to say. Another 5-star romance I read this month was Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne. And Kirsten from Kirsten's Corner actually sent me this book, so thank you so much, Kirsten. She sent it to me as an engagement gift. This was the first thing that I read after me and Cameron got engaged, and it was so freaking sweet. It was like the perfect book to read while I was like feeling these fuzzy, nice romantic feelings, because the love interest in this book reminded me so much of my fiance, and oh my god, it was just so sweet. I was like crying every other chapter because I'm like, this reminds me of Cameron, and like I get to marry him, and I don't know, it was just such a like emotional time with this book, and I absolutely loved it. If you don't know what this book is about, it follows Ruthie, who is just a nice little sweet girl who works at a retirement home, and she's kind of like an old woman herself. She's not going out and partying, she's not an insta baddie, she's none of those things. She's just a cute little casual gal. She likes to stay in, she likes a nice bubble bath, and her life kind of gets turned upside down when the owner of the retirement home's son, who is a failing tattoo artist, shows up, and he is like funny, he is like quirky, he's like golden retriever energy, but make him edgy with a bunch of tattoos. He shows up and starts challenging Ruthie a little bit and pushing her out of her comfort zone, and I think she kind of gives him some stability, so it's like this really sweet give and take. If you've read this book, you know. I also loved the discussion around tattoos. I've recently like become obsessed with tattoos and like tattoo culture and the different styles of tattoos, so that was super fun to read about. And again, Teddy, our main character, it was literally just Cameron. Like his personality, the way that he was, the way that he like makes Ruthie feel comfortable and accepted, and he's like sweet but also like quirky and eccentric, and he loves to eat. Oh my god, that was just like, it just reminded me of me and Cameron's dynamic so much. Even though I'm not exactly like Ruthie and he's not exactly like Teddy and the way that we like do things and our interests and stuff like that. Just their dynamic and the way that they talk to each other was very much me and Cameron, and I thought it was so sweet. I absolutely loved it. Also, the element of like the tortoises in this book was so cute. I just thought it was like sweet and lighthearted, and I highly recommend this book. It was pretty much nothing like The Hating Game, although it did have that like signature Sally Thorne fun banter, but it didn't have very much smut. It was mostly just like sweet and cute and lovely, and I thought that was a really nice juxtaposition to The Hating Game, which I feel like is really punchy and funny and cutting and smutty. Like, this was not that, but I really liked this one as well, so highly recommend. Another 5-star book I read this month was The Girl in 6E by A.R. Torre, and I know this book has a lot of mixed opinions on BookTube, but I loved it. This follows our main character, who is a sociopath, but she's a very self-aware sociopath, and she knows that she will murder people if she is let out of her apartment. So she does the responsible thing, and she goes ahead and locks herself in her apartment. She's been locked in here for 3 years at this point. She's just making a living being a cam girl, you know? Sometimes you just do what you gotta do, and before this whole work from home thing started, all she could do working from home was being a cam girl. So she does whatever her clients tell her to do on the camera. She chats with some creepy men, and she gets all her groceries delivered, and she just lives locked in her house because she knows that if she leaves, she will commit a murder. And we're following the story of what happens when she comes across a client who is creepier than normal, and she thinks that he might actually commit a murder himself. So she's kind of trying to stop him, but stopping him might require her to leave her apartment, thereby putting everyone around her at risk. And there's also a dark romance plot in here as well, because she's kind of falling for her UPS guy who like delivers all of her packages, because she gets like 1 million packages. Obviously she can't leave the house, and I don't know, everything about this book was wonderful. I think the sex positive representation was wonderful. I think the feminist themes were phenomenal. I thought the mental health rep and how we conceptualize trauma and diagnoses and even sociopathy was so wonderful in this book. The therapist representation, like, our main character has 2 different therapists. Both of those therapists, very accurate representation to how therapy sessions are actually run and what it's like to carry out mental health services via the internet or via the phone, which is what I have to do right now during COVID. And it was really refreshing to see that kind of representation in a book as well. The romance was wonderful. The thriller plot was wonderful. You do have to suspend your disbelief at the end, okay? It gets a little crazy, but it wasn't unbelievable to me. It was just like, if you lose yourself in the story, it's very believable. But if you're really looking at it with a critical eye, maybe don't. But this book was a freaking journey for me. I loved every second of it. If you're sensitive to erotica or any kind of explicit sexual content, maybe stray away from this. Also, if you're sensitive to graphic descriptions of murder, violence, body horror, again, things like that, probably stay away from this. But if that stuff doesn't faze you and you're like me and you can just lose yourself in a book, not be super critical and have fun, I think you'll love it. This is like one of my new favorites of all time. I think it's iconic, and I can't wait to read the rest of the series. All right, you guys, I saved the best book that I read this month for last, and I know this was a long one, so if you're still here, thanks for sticking around. You get to see one of my new all-time favorite books. That would be Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier. Now, I have to say a very, very special thank you to Dawn, one of my subscribers here on this channel. She actually sent me this book. Thank you so much for introducing me to this and forcing me to read it by sending it to me, because it is literally one of my new favorite books of all time. You guys, this rivals Pretty Girls. That's high praise. So this book follows our main character, who did not commit a murder, but she kind of like aided and abetted a murder that took place when she was in high school. It is 15 years later, and the police end up finding out that she did this and convicting her of this crime. So we follow her as her life is falling apart. She's a very successful executive. She has a rich fiance. It all is crumbling apart at the trial. We also follow her as she goes to jail and what it's like in a women's prison as she kind of navigates those politics. And then we follow her afterwards when she gets out of jail, and there's a copycat killer who's kind of mimicking that style of murder that she was involved in her town, and everyone in the town thinks it's her and that she's involved because she just got out of prison, and then this stuff is happening and she's like, huh? Who is actually doing this? And it all goes absolutely wild at the end. The twists in this book are unbelievable, mind-blowing. Like, I started putting the pieces together like a page before I would read what happened, and I think it was designed and written that way, which is just genius, because you read like a little clue and you're like, oh shit, oh my god, no, there's no way that that's what's happening right now, and you flip the page and you read it and you're like, oh my god, that is what's happening right now. Like, these twists were insane. It is so dark, so graphic. If that kind of like graphic violence, sexual assault, murder, anything like that bothers you, definitely stray away from this one. But if you can handle it, if you are a fan of pretty girls, I think you would really like this one as well. We also get interspersed with our main story some flashback scenes of our main character in high school when the murder actually happened, and those are like really fun. I don't know if I want to say fun, but the vibes overall are fun because it's like late 80s, early 90s vibes is when she was in high school, and it's very like nostalgic. They're like drinking Slurpees and wearing their varsity jackets, and it's very much like those vibes in the flashback scenes. It reminds me a lot of Heathers in the flashback scenes, or like Not Another Teen Movie, like something like that. Oh my god, I can't even describe it. This book literally had everything that I was wanting. Pretty Girls, add a little bit of like You by Caroline Kepnes and a little bit of Heathers, and you get this book. I mean, could I sing higher praises for this book? No, I couldn't. Thank you so much, Dawn, for bringing this book into my life. And y'all, this just proves, like, if I'm not listening to you in the comments and you really want me to read a book, if you send it to me, I'll probably read it. Because I trust you guys, especially after this. I'm like, y'all really know what the hell you're talking about. So yeah, this is one of my new favorites of all time, and I really want every single one of you to read it. I'm so passionate about this book. It was phenomenal. And it proves that you guys know my freaking taste in books so well. That was a lot of books. Thank you for watching if you stuck it out and you're still here. And yeah, subscribe to my channel. Like this video if you liked it, if you liked hanging out. Don't forget to enter the giveaway and use my discount code down below if you want to get yourself a Vaunt reading light as well. Thank you again, Vaunt, for sponsoring this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.